In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Please be seated. Well, we took a little side trip this weekend. We drove up, guess where? Yes, Syracuse, once again. We wanted to go see Nick, who's doing some research work up there. And while we were there, we took a side trip up to Seneca Falls. We'd never been there, and we thought it'd be kind of neat to see. And if you know Seneca Falls, it is famous for two things. One, it is the birthplace, really, of the women's suffrage movement, of women's rights. And so we went to go see the Wesleyan Chapel, where that first women's conference was in 1840, 50 something. Yeah, history's not my strong suit. Anyway, in the mid-19th century. And we went there. The place is just filled with human rights issues, with posters and stores, and it's a wonderful thing. But it was also filled with movie memorabilia. Because if you know anything about Seneca Falls, it is considered to be sort of the inspiration for that Jimmy Stewart movie, It's a Wonderful Life. And so every other store has movie posters, and we got these glasses for Nicholas from Nick's Bar, from the movie. And it was just all this It's a Wonderful Life memorabilia. Oddly enough, of those two things, it's the movie that has more to do with our feast day today than the Women's Rights Conference. And I'll tell you why. What is today, first of all? The feast, exactly, thank you, the Feast of the Transfiguration. To understand the connection, we have to remind ourselves, what is the Transfiguration? Because this is an important thing for us. You notice that we're wearing white, and anytime we're wearing white, that's kind of a big deal. The Transfiguration is that day when Jesus brought Peter, James, and John up to the holy mountain, and he is visually, literally changed before them. He glows. He is in the presence, all of a sudden, of Abraham and Elijah, these icons of the law and the prophets. And they understand who he is. And in seeing him for whom he truly is, they also discover who they truly are. It's a powerful moment for them. What on earth does that have to do with Jimmy Stewart? Just this. In that movie, I'm assuming you remember the movie. Yes? Please say yes. It's an old, Christmas movie, right? But I'm going to put out an argument that it is also a Transfiguration movie. Maybe more a Transfiguration movie than Christmas, really. Because what happens? You've got this guy, George Bailey, who wants nothing more than to leave what he calls this crummy little town and go out and see the world. And yet time and time again, he's sort of sucked back in to the town because people need him. George Bailey is almost unreal. He is good and kind and loving and patient and loyal to people who don't seem to be giving him anything. And then, in the moment of crisis, when all the world seems to be crashing down on him and he has completely given up, he is a shell of himself and he is literally ready to die. In that moment, the town comes to his rescue. And all the people rush in to help him. And you see him light up. And in fact, if you look at the movie, he almost seems to glow. What has happened there? The people of that town have suddenly seen him for who he is to them. They have seen his importance to them. And in seeing him for who he is, two other things happen. One is that he gets to see himself finally for who he is, which is not a chump, but a hero. And the people of that town get to see themselves, get to discover themselves for who they can be. In a way, both at the Transfiguration and in this movie, It's a Wonderful Life, what you have is someone who is, in a sense, too good to be true, but who is made known to the people around them for who they really and truly are. Jesus as truly the Son of God. George Bailey is just this really great guy. And the people around them see them and recognize it. And in recognizing that, they see themselves. Now, you would have thought that with Jesus, they would have figured this out by now. This is nothing new, really. I mean, at his baptism, Jesus was changed, complete with the voice from heaven saying, "This is my Son with whom I'm well pleased." So it was not really anything new. I mean, and if the disciples had even been paying attention a little bit over their time with Jesus, they would have known there's something different about this guy. I mean, most people don't walk on water. Most people don't turn water into wine. Most people don't raise the dead or heal the sick. So they would have had to know that Jesus was special, that he is the Son of God. All they had to do was open their eyes. What that moment on the mountain did was, in a sense, just confirm it, but more importantly, changed them. Because when they left that mountain, it was to go down and continue the march toward Jerusalem and toward the cross. What that moment with Jesus did was confirm with them who it was that they were following and what it was that they were all about. That when Jesus said, "I am here to reconcile others with God," they knew it. And they knew who they were and what they were supposed to be doing. So that when they left, they were empowered. They would never be exactly like Jesus, but they knew what they had to shoot for. And they knew they could. They had the power and the courage and the desire to be like Christ, the one they saw up on the mountain. It's in the same way the movie changed the people around them. They saw George Bailey for who he was, and they said, "Yeah, I can do that." One of the best things about good storytelling is that often the protagonist is not real in a lot of ways, maybe too good to be real, but they are also relatable so that you can see yourself in that person at least a little bit, even if it's just as an aspiration. So George Bailey, there aren't a lot of people like him. There really aren't. But when people left that movie theater, they left thinking, I can do that, at least a little. I can make my town, my state, my world just a little bit better. The power of the Transfiguration is that we get to see Christ for who he is. The disciples witness him, and they bring that back down. But the bigger power is that they discover who they are. And because they discovered it, we also get to see who Christ is. And because we get to see who Christ is, we get to discover who we are. Because you and I, as the followers of Christ, we can embody kindness and courage and generosity and mercy and patience. We can embody the love of God. The Transfiguration is all about seeing Christ for who he is. But just like in that movie, it's also about discovering who you are. I invite you, just as the disciples were invited, to look up and see Christ, but in doing so, to see yourself. Amen.